Welcome to Liminal Space, where we explore the thresholds of identity, culture, and experience. This is a podcast for those who find themselves navigating the space in between, whether it's between cultures, between worlds, or between ideas. Each episode, we delve into the rich complexity of China's story, as told by those who exist at its peripheries, diaspora voices, third culture kids, and individuals who embody the bridge between tradition and modernity. We'll uncover the insights that live in the liminal, those subtle spaces between the black and white, the familiar and foreign. So, along with my co-host, Matt, today we have the pleasure of introducing Julia Meyn, a shipbuilder, Iron Chef in training, and China hard mode speedrunner. So I personally actually met Julia while she was visiting Shenzhen for a mutual friend of ours that they met through an online Chinese class. And it was there that I learned that Julia worked in the maritime industry in China, where she spends her days inspecting giant ships being built in the central part of the country. So I was, as was everyone in that gathering, very fascinated. We had no idea that there was such a robust shipbuilding industry here, or rather, I feel like we don't really think about ships that often in our lives at all. So it was very insightful to hear Julia introduce her background and her journey to this part of the world. And we'd love for her to share that with us today. So hello, Julia.
Hi, Susan and Matt. Thank you so much for inviting me. I can't
welcome.
wait to kind of go into my experience. Definitely a bit unique compared to most of the other foreigners you meet here. I feel like any foreigner you see on the street, you're like, English teacher. And so just meeting anyone who's a little bit different, you're like, how did you end up here? So I can't wait to share this story.
For sure. And I guess just to start us off, like Susan said, ships are an integral part of our world and our lives, but it's not something that people really think much about. So I guess before we go on and unpack kind of your journey to China, specifically like a tier 3 or 4 city in Jiangsu from Texas, which is very far away, why don't you just unpack a little bit about kind of your relationship with ships and naval engineering? Like how did this become an area of interest or a profession that you became interested in?
Yeah, for sure. So in high school, kind of around maybe sophomore year, you start thinking about colleges, where you want to go, what you want to do. And I kind of had two halves that I was really interested, kind of languages and cultures and people, and then kind of like the math and science. Like I really was fascinated with how things worked, why they work, how they work together. So kind of those two different aspects. So I would kind of tour colleges looking into different engineering disciplines, and none of them fit. And it wasn't until someone, my dad actually, mentioned that naval engineering was a thing. That was the first time that anything felt interesting, that it felt right. And so I kind of like, it's like, all right, building ships is cool, boats are cool, the water's cool. And I kind of chose naval engineering just so that I could end up living by the water. And so I kind of just went for it. And then in college, it was very interesting because a lot of my classmates had a passion for boat building. Like their great grandfathers built the first yacht that sailed the world, or, all this. And I was just like, I like to swim in the ocean. I like to be by the water. I like to be on a boat. But I didn't have this like fervor for like the wind sails were made of this cotton, and you're like, okay, I'm glad that you love that. So I did feel
Moby Dick
little
stuff.
Exactly. It's like my great grandmother's niece's father was actually the man who was on the Moby Dick ship that Moby Dick was inspired. You're like, wow, okay.
Yeah,
It's like this piece of wood is actually from this. You're like, wow, thank you.
I get it now.
Passion. And then, so I kind of felt a little out of place because I didn't have that passion. I just have an interest to learn. So I was like, so I had a lot of doubt within college of like, should I continue with maritime? It's so niche as it is. No one knows it. It seems pretty small at the time, at least. But then when you think about it, it's massive. It's global. It's probably the most global kind of industry because it has to be. And so I was like, you know what? Worst comes to worst, I could get a different job, but let me just try this out because I do like how small it is. Like you will meet people who know other people. Like it's somehow very connected and very diverse at the same time with the different people who are involved, the different jobs you can have. So then within college, I did this program. It was called cooperative education. So I ended up taking every other semester off to work. I ended up graduating with like 4 different job experiences. And in my
Wow,
head, it
wow.
was to kind of, yeah. And so I kind of wanted to start from like construction to then go backwards to the design phase. So I had, a couple different actual in the shipyard experiences where I was walking around the shipyard, kind of not as intense as what I do now, but just kind of like more of a manager, like assistant to the manager. And then I ended in design and I had an idea that I would not like design. And it's true. I cannot sit at my desk for 8 hours. If I don't talk to at least 5 different people a day, I might die. So, kind of like from my experiences, when time for graduation came around, I knew I wanted to be outside in the field, walking around. And so I was kind of like looking at what jobs kind of had that. And it wasn't until my company actually had like an event at my school where they talked about this rotational program where you were able to rotate through 4 main aspects of the company and then at the end of it decide which path you wanted to go. And so at the time it was the engineering department, the surveying department, which is what I do now, the technology, and then the business management. So even though I went into the rotational program, I had a strong sense that I would choose surveying because that is what I like to do. It's, 30% office work, 70% in the field.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, the lay of the land. It seems really complicated, but another, I guess, interesting thing that I'm pretty unsure about is like what actually is surveying. I
Mm.
mean, I guess when I think about this in my mind, I think of people with like clipboards, like walking around and looking at stuff. But what does that actually look like in terms of a actual role, like an integral role in the ship maintenance or design or engineering system?
Yeah, for sure. So I work for what we call in the maritime industry a classification society. And I would say think about it as like the third party like verifier to make sure that everything is in compliance. So if you go to a restaurant, you have the health food inspector, like a third party health food inspector to come in and make sure everything's up to code. And so that's my job, except an inspector looks at every single thing. A surveyor is like a degree below that because there's just impossible. Ships are being built too quickly to be able to look at every single aspect. So you're trying to get like a general view of the land. So in my shipyard, it's a new construction shipyard, and we essentially have like 2 sides to surveying. We have the hull side and then the machinery side. And so hull side, you're
Okay.
looking at welds, you're making sure that all the different pieces of metal are in the places that those pieces of metal should be. It's like what I call you're building the puzzle pieces of the ship to then be put together. And then the machinery is
Gotcha.
all that stuff that goes inside. So you're making sure that the piping doesn't leak and you're making sure that the engine works, all these like electrical aspects work, all the safety measures are in place. And so that's
Hmm.
kind of what you're surveying. You're verifying that all of these different aspects are up to code. And I'm just the code
Mm.
verifier, essentially.
Oh, okay. Interesting, interesting. So I guess on this topic of the surveying role and also the current role that you're in right now in China, would you mind just telling us a little bit about why your current role is in China and maybe
Hmm.
how it was that you came to China in the first place?
Yeah, for sure. So, about halfway through my rotational program, the rotational engineer manager, we had our like monthly check-in, and he had just casually mentioned like, oh, the HR representative of Southeast Asia is interested in having people come survey abroad sooner, because usually the process is you work for the company between 3 to 5 years and then they might send you abroad. But this would be essentially an immediate send abroad, which is my dream. And I'm like, I need to schedule a meeting. What's his name again? First and last. I need to look him up. I need to schedule a meeting tomorrow. So I scheduled a meeting with him pretty quickly. I'm like, what's this that I hear that you want us to come over? Like, where do you want us to come over? Like, what's like, why? And essentially at the time, he was saying like, oh, we want people to come to South Korea and learn about the shipbuilding industry because it's at a level so much higher than the United States that you learn so much. So you gain all this information to then bring back to the United States. And then you're almost like an expert by the time you get back to the United States, comparatively with like the amount of time you worked abroad. So if I work abroad for 3 years, it's like 8 years worth of knowledge just crammed into 3. And so you see more and you can catch problems a bit quicker, because in the United States, one shipyard could build one ship every year and a half, every 2 years. My one shipyard builds 40 ships in a year. So it's just a scale that's like you can't help but, and there's like, yeah, they have like probably the same amount of problems, but just because you see more ships, there's more things you see, and like how to manage that, what we did, what kind of works before, what doesn't work, and it's just more knowledge, kind of overwhelmingly so. But so because I knew I wanted to do surveying, I'm like, this is everything I could ever want. So I was like, yes, sign me up. And then about 4 months before we would have moved to South Korea, China opened up its borders again. And because China's, I'm pretty sure now, the number 1 shipbuilder in the world, like there's such a draw to have people come to China that the South Korea opportunity then just became only China. And then that's where my internal conflict began, because South Korea, I'm familiar with it as much as any American. And then China's like, what?
The great unknown.
The great unknown. No one I've ever known has ever been there, and I was kind of explaining to people at the time is that the last image I really have of China was that 2008 Olympics where it's full of smog. And I have this like a video of this like artist who goes around with a vacuum cleaner, just vacuuming the air and has a brick of dust. And so there was this like internal conflict of like fear and then like what I've always wanted to do. And so I think kind of like what eventually like kind of eased that and like helped me decide to just go for it, like have the leap of faith, was that I had a dream about being in Shanghai. And if I had a dream about being in Shanghai and it wasn't a nightmare, it was just a dream, walking around the Bund, I'm like, okay, it's not scary. And then at the time, I actually had a coworker who had a young American daughter with him, and she was fine. Like, you look at this kid and she's totally fine. It's like an average kid anywhere. And I thought, man, if this 3-year-old girl can live in small town China, I can as well. Like, I can't have this 3-year-old be more brave and confident than my adult self. So I just decided to come. And then, and then we got put into the little spot.
That's a fascinating pivot from like an unexpected development. So so you decide to go to China, you decide to experience it yourself. So you land in China. What were your first impressions? How was those first few weeks? Especially since you're traveled to a very small town, Jiangyin, which most foreigners' first exposure to China would be somewhere like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen. So somewhere that small. How was it like in the beginning?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, I spent the first month in Shanghai, and you're like, wow, what was I ever worried about? Shanghai is like any major city, and me being a city girl, I'm like, okay, this is fine. I could totally live here, no problem at all. And then after that month, we moved to small town China. And it was kind of an immediate like, oh man, this is different. Before in
China
Shanghai,
hard
no one
mode.
would bat an China hard mode for sure. And it was the kind of thing where I kind of came over with two other Americans to my small town. And it was the kind of thing where we like stuck together that first month when we were or not the first few weeks when we were in the hotel. So we would go eat dinner together. And it was just like a very like, man, there's nobody else like us around. Like we're eating at a restaurant and little kids will come up to the window like an aquarium staring at us. And I'm like,
Oh man.
okay, this is and that was like the first taste of what life was going to be. But it was also very calm and fine. It was just the town I moved to was very family oriented. A lot of young families, like grandparents with, the parents with the grandkid. And so that first kind of 9 months was a struggle in the sense of like, what is there to do here? Because work is intense and hard, but enjoyable and challenging and interesting and not boring. But then you want to have this whole other social life. And me back home in Houston, I had a very intense social life. And so I was just trying to find what to do with this time. And so, I think
Say more
everyone.
about this intense social life. Like, what were you into back then?
So back in Houston, I would try to see at least one person every single day after work, whether we go get dinner together, just get a drink, go to comedy shows, go to these small little band concert things. My family's in Houston, so I would go visit my family. And it was just kind of like a repeat of that. Like I realized that my hobbies was fill in the blank with friends.
Okay.
Go for a walk with friends, go to the movies with friends, go to the museum. It was just fill in the blank with friends. And now I didn't have the with friends. And I'm like, what is this fill in the blank?
Yeah,
And
for sure. So how have you found community in China and your surroundings, or how have you perhaps tried to engage with your surroundings in Jiangyin, this smaller city?
Mm-hmm. So it's pretty tough, I would say, to find community. I would say I still haven't found community so much in Jiangyin up until recently because everyone at the shipyard, like all my coworkers, they're all dads. And also
Oh,
hardly any, yeah, and they're fine, they're great, but we're not hanging out like that. And then almost all my
yeah.
coworkers don't even live in my small town. They live in the bigger town nearby because that's where the good schools are at. And so what I've kind of had to do was that I've created a small group of friends kind of either in Shanghai, Hangzhou, and I had this big hang up around like convenience where it's like, man, I just want to like hang out with a friend for like an hour after work. Like I just want to go get ice cream. But then I realized it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's not the life that you have now. So you're just going to have to do it. Like that's just the price to pay. So once I kind of like got over this idea of convenience, I was able to expand the friendship groups that I had. I would meet my friends' friends and I would just, like what else was I going to do on the weekends? Might as well go somewhere and see someone and talk about something. And so that kind of helped a lot to have that mentality. But now, recently, there's like an influx of young social people in my shipyard. And I'm like, oh my goodness, friends? And so now we're starting to hang out during the work week. And so now I feel pretty content and fulfilled socially,
That's great.
through my
Yeah.
day to day.
A lot
Yeah,
of
I
hide
know.
and seek around the shipyard, or no?
No, but there is you kind of always keep your eye out because my shipyard's like, I don't know, 5 miles long, maybe. It takes me 20 minutes on an e-bike to get to one side to the other. So it's kind of like you're always keeping your eyes out for, if you see them. If you're walking around, just patrolling, making sure that things are in order, you kind of keep your, an eye out, be like, are they also patrolling at the same time?
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. And also I wanted to take a closer look at your work at the shipyard because you had brought up some very interesting statistics like how China makes 40 ships in a year and America makes one. And how your yard is like 5 miles long. And I remember when we met up before, you gave this whole rundown of how shipbuilding works in China and the layers of complexity to it, but also the efficiency. So could you maybe talk a little bit more about that? Like, what is shipbuilding in China? What is your workplace like? And where do these ships end up? Like, yeah, give us an overview.
For sure. So kind of from what I understand, because I don't read too much on maritime news, this is just what I hear from all my nerdier colleagues about the maritime industry. And some of it is from experience. But in the United States, for the most part, the only ships we're building are for the government or kind of like only use within the United States. So they're either small tugboats or, Merchant Academy training ships. So it's pretty small and pretty limited. So from what I understand is shipbuilding used to be massive in the United States around World War II, where we just needed all these ships to go out and fight. But since we don't need that anymore, a lot of them have been dying off or being bought out by, foreign interests. I worked at a shipyard that was bought by an Italian company. And so, right, there's that going on. So it's definitely dying. There's not a need because shipbuilding in the United States is very expensive because the workforce is very expensive, the material is very expensive. What's nice about China is that it's all built here for the most part. The metal is built here, the engines are built here. All these kind of more complex, systems are built here in China, and it's all kind of within 200 kilometers. So it's not that far. It's not that you have to ship the metal from so far away. It's all kind of right here. So China is like pretty much self-sufficient when it comes to shipbuilding versus not many other countries are. And then you just have such a high population. You have a large workforce. And then you just have the land as well. So along my river, there might be 10 plus different shipbuilding, not even just repair yards, but like physically building new ships. And so a lot of European companies, ship owning companies, request to have their ships built in China. It seems like majority of the major shipping companies they're switching away from Korea, which is more like specialized, now it's more LNG carrier focused.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't need this kind of more intense specialized, like why not go for the cheaper, faster option that it works?
What is LNG, by the way?
Liquefied natural gas. Yeah. So, and then there's like a big shift in the maritime industry to go green fuel. So like to become more, environmentally friendly. So now there's a lot of dual fuel ships, which typically means, the typical maritime gas fuel and then LNG. So now it's kind of like these two systems.
I see.
And so now, yeah, it's a big shift. But yeah, there's I think, so Japan used to be number one, and then Korea became number one, and now China is becoming number one because I think they can be. They have the ability to become number one in the sense of speed and size. Like in the United States, one shipyard might have 2,000 employees. My shipyard has 17,000 employees,
Wow,
or at least
what
workers.
the heck? Is that a big shipyard in China?
So I would say my shipyard is probably, from what I hear, medium-sized. It's not even the biggest shipyard. It's
Wow.
maybe slightly above average, but it's well within the average area. Yeah, so
Sure.
that's what's crazy to think about is that this is just like a normal shipyard in China.
Yeah, the big ones.
So are they all in that location though? Like where you are, Jiangyin, is that like the shipbuilding hub, or kind of are they distributed throughout the country?
Yeah, so we have offices all along the coastline. So all the way up from Dalian to Guangzhou. So it's like all along the coast. I think we have maybe 15 to 20 main areas, like main hubs, but I definitely think Jiangsu has a significant amount, but it's like broken up into thirds. So like Jiangsu area is like 1/3, the north is 1/3, and the south is 1/3. But it's all the way along, so but it kind of differs. So Zhoushan, kind of what is it? East of Shanghai, southeast, that is mainly focused on repair work. So there's, I think, maybe 20 different shipyards there in those islands, but it's, repair work versus inland is new construction. You don't really, if there's not a need to go inland, why would you repair your ship? So a lot of the outside coastline, I think,
Right.
is more repair focused versus my river is more new building focused.
Interesting. I guess like having your background, so you've had internship and work experience in the States and then also now in China, would you say like are there any kind of like relevant ideas or connections that we can discern from like the differences in Chinese versus American approaches to shipbuilding or the industry in general? Are there any like interesting trends or observations that you kind of made like comparing, contrasting the two approaches?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I feel like the only one is kind of because I would say in the United States, we don't feel this pressure unless it in the sense of new construction. We don't really feel this pressure to build super efficiently on time. Like, yes, there is some, but in China, it's like top priority. Like you can sense
Mm,
that this is what they're like. And it's not a question if we'll make it, we will make it. Like if we set
yeah,
this deadline to build the ship, it will happen. Because
yeah,
versus in the United States, it's more of like a goal. Like we have a goal to reach this time, but then there's a sense of like lack of efficiency where it's like things are not always set up. Like if I went for an inspection in the United States for new construction, like we might not be able to test everything because it's not all set up. Versus in
hmm,
China, or at least at my shipyard, if it's not set up, people are calling people to get it set up immediately because we cannot beat this deadline. Like we cannot miss it. We have to. So it's definitely more intense, more pressure from what I can feel and sense
yeah,
in China compared to the United States. But I would say like like construction wise, like this is something about the maritime industry in general where we're very slow to adapt and change.
mm,
So it's like,
hmm,
you know, like it wasn't until somewhat recent, not, I mean, like this time 100 years ago, we were building ships by essentially like stapling it together with rivets, you know,
okay,
yeah, using steam versus, and so now we're welding, but it's definitely like slower to
hmm,
get to these new technologies. But
right,
with like, we have this international organization that's kind of pressuring ship companies to become more efficient. So there's this
hmm,
big push to become more energy efficient from like the big maritime organization, International Maritime
I
Organization, to
see,
become more energy efficient by this date. So now you can
okay,
sense this like we have to get cleaner fuel and like so the first step is to get, this LNG liquefied natural gas and then there's like future technology. So I would say just within the past couple decades, maybe 10, you could sense this new technology is being used sooner than I think
mm,
without this forced requirement, this
got
rule
it, got it.
change.
Cool. And so I'm also curious to learn a little bit more about kind of this shift to like hybrid energy or LNG implementation for, environmental sustainability purposes. Like, is this where does China and the US place in terms of like their technological capabilities or willingness to innovate and use more LNG? And overall, like how do you assess kind of like the actual environmental impact of switching over? Is it sizable or do you have some hesitations?
Um, so this is where it's kind of funny, like for me a little bit, where I think the maritime industry causes 3% of all global emissions, which feels like
Oh,
so
okay.
tiny,
Wait, only
but
three?
then,
Oh,
yep.
okay.
But, I think it's the kind of thing where it's like, well, we could still do our part because,
I see.
ship ships run on like the dirtiest, grossest, worst fuel possible because it can.
Yeah,
And so it's like, hey,
gutter oil.
we can be better. Yeah, sludge, you know. So we could do better, be better. And so it kind of really depends on the ship owners and what they want and what they need to do. So now like the shipbuilders want these, dual fuel ships. And kind of like some ship owners want these dual fuel ships that can then eventually use the next better green energy efficient fuel, but it's not quite
Mm-hmm.
ready because there's not enough ports that have this fuel available. It's all about the readiness
Oh,
of the
yeah, yeah.
world too. So it's not so much against United States, China, it's the world. Like if you're able to carry this super great and use a super great clean fuel, but then none of the ports have it except for 2 in the world, how beneficial is that? So it's like we
Right,
all
right.
together need to improve, not so much like who's doing it. It's like all of us at the
Yeah.
same time because these
Ah,
ships travel all over the world. Yeah.
Got
interesting.
it.
We all
Yeah,
got to be better.
I never thought about it from that perspective as well. Like, but when you think about how much logistics goes on all over the world, the cohesion is, I imagine, very important here. So I'm also curious because you mentioned ship owners. So, and you also mentioned at the beginning that most of these ships don't are commissioned or they don't end up within China. So I guess what percentage of the could you say like of the ships you've worked on are actually Chinese owned, or are they mostly just like Chinese shipbuilding OEMs that'll make them for other companies out there?
So the projects that I'm working on, kind of how it works at my office is that you're assigned to like one ship owner. So I've been working for the same ship owner for the past 2 years, and it's a Singaporean company. But there's, Greek owners, Italian, or I think French owners. So it's very kind of mixed and diverse, I would say, with ship owners and this is the part of the world where I also don't know too much because in the United States, I don't think we really have ship owners. Like no one's really has like a fleet. Like we do, but to just such a small scale. And it's like river ships, or like along the coastline. So they're not big, they're not international versus these. But then again, I'm not 100%. Everything I'm saying about these ship owners, I'm not 100%. It's just
Mm-hmm.
what I believe and what I've seen. Um, and then I would say for like Chinese shipping companies, if a Chinese owned shipping company wants built like a ship, they would probably go to use like not my company because they don't need my company. They're most likely going to use the Chinese version of this because we have 10 classification societies. And so I think a Chinese company, just like an American shipping company, would use the American version versus Europeans, they kind of pick and choose. They use like a European one, like mine. There's like kind of 5
Interesting.
major ones. And so if you're a big international shipping company, you would want to diversify which classification society you're with. So they might choose between 4. So they have like a
Makes
rotation,
sense.
like 20% go to this company, 20%. But then also, even if a company builds a ship under my company's codes, they can switch. Like it's not a permanent. So a lot of companies will switch classification societies. So it's all this like mixing. And then,
Mm-hmm.
ship owners will sell ships to other ship owners and they could choose a different classification society. So nothing's kind of permanent. It's
Yeah.
always kind of moving hands when it comes to rules, like what rules you follow, but there's like 2 sets of rules. There's the international standards and then our classification standards. So the international standards
Mm-hmm.
are same for everybody, and then we have our own personal rules that tie into the international ones, but some of them are like the verbiage is different, the alarms are different. It's but more or
Mm-hmm.
less very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, so that ties into like my follow-up actually, which is how your company fits into all of this. Because from our conversation, it seems like you guys don't actually like build or design or like partake in the process, but you're more of like the third party inspectors that ship owners who are getting their fleets made
Mm-hmm.
can hire to make sure that things are on spec and to monitor that progress. Is that right?
Yeah, so kind of how it from my understanding, this is how it works. The ship owner will contact a shipyard saying like, "Hey, I want to build this type of ship for like," and then they like work whatever financial stuff, but like this type of ship, design it. And so the shipyard will design and figure out all the different components, and then between the shipyard and the ship owner, they'll decide which classification society they choose. And so once that's chosen, the three of us kind of come together and sign a contract saying, like, you are going to build this ship with these specific items, and we will, like, my company will provide you with these documentations to follow these sets of rules, blah, blah, blah. And then we start. And so then the shipyard designs the ship and will send my company the engineering drawings, which we review and make sure that they are within the rules, both the international standards and our rules. And so then they get those drawings approved. Once the drawings are approved, the ship then starts construction. And then our job is to verify that the ship is building to our approved drawings. And so then the ship between
kind of like auditors,
ship owner,
right?
Kind of, because then the ship owner is
like
also with us as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's like the two of us together then go essentially see the shipyard's work, and the ship owner will have different standards that we have. Like, for us, is this like the nicest looking thing? It's like, no, but it's within our rules. The ship owner might make a comment and be like, hey, I want you to fix this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We'll make comments, be like, I need you to do this. And the ship owner might be like, that's not, it's like we have similar priorities, but sometimes it varies. But we're usually
we need more luxurious toilets.
Yeah, you're like, excuse me, the shower. No, they're not too picky when it comes to that. Of course, like the ship owners want the nicest, best, efficient, functioning ship versus like for us, it's like, if we have these like minimum standards. And what's different about new construction versus after construction is that new construction, all three of us are always at the shipyard for years at a time. Versus after construction, the owners are in and out within a week max. So you don't build this like relationship between either the shipyard or the owner. Versus with new construction, you can really build and foster a relationship.
It's like a huge project, I guess. Each project has its own crew, right?
The shipyard's kind of set up where like this area has a crew, this area has a crew, but it's like the same crew, so you see the same faces, like the same ship owners will stay for the whole duration of that project. And a lot of the ship owners are like constantly rolling new projects. So it's like they're constantly signing new contracts. And because the shipyard builds so many ships, if they sign a contract today to build ships, it won't be built from 2 years from now because the shipyard's already booked up with all the previous orders. And so then, you kind of just have this sometimes steady stream of ship owners. Sometimes ship owners leave and then they come back. It kind of just depends on the project and what they want to build.
Okay.
But I would say
cool.
Average 2 years for a project.
Got it. Okay. What are some like interesting, unorthodox or strange like design choices for ships that maybe you've like had the chance to look over and you're like, what the heck? What are they thinking? Or like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, never thought about it.
There's one example that comes to mind. It hasn't started yet, but it's like on the horizon. And it looks weird. And it's called wind sails. And when you first hear wind sails, you think it's like you're going to put
elegant,
like a canvas pirate ship sail on like this metal massive, but like, what are we doing here? But it's actually like these like, because this is like brand new technology. It's just within the past few years, people are starting to implement this technologies. Because LNG, liquefied natural gas, that's some older technology that is being implemented more frequently now. It's not so new. It's not so like, how does this work? But this is, within the past 5 years, and it's called wind sails. And I essentially believe it, it's like these pillars that come out of the ship that uses wind energy to help be more efficient with like propulsion. And you're like, okay. And so the project that I'm now working on has 3 of them. Yeah. Bring back, old technology, make it new. And so that's cool. The kind of thing where it's like interesting to see how it's going to be implemented, because it's like the first time that the shipyard's ever really working with this technology. And so this is where you can kind of feel the hesitation because it's not like a standard design, a standard
Tried and
technology.
true.
Like it's a higher risk because, the ship owners might demand a certain efficiency that the shipyard can't guarantee because this would be the very first time in, I'm pretty sure China, there's like a couple projects going on at the same time that would be implementing this wind sail. And so it's like, how can you, and so it's like the shipyard doesn't want to take on that risk. It's like, hey, ship owner, if you want to implement these sails, go for it. But like, we can't guarantee anything. Like we'll help put it on the boat. We'll like build the ship so that it can handle it. But everything else, like how good it works, how efficient it, makes your propulsion, that's on you. We're not signing up for that. And so now there's kind of like some complications of like, how do we get these wind sails over and whatnot? And so it's interesting to see how, because it's like being talked about now at my shipyard on my project, how this technology might happen. Because the only instances we see this being implemented is in modification repair work, where it's like after the ship has been sailing for a few years, they've installed it, but we've never seen it yet in new construction. So from the beginning.
Interesting.
So it's like, so this is something where I'm like, this is an interesting design because, how does it work? How efficient can your ship be in saving fuel and whatnot? Because this is like all tied back to like the green energy. Like this is a way to have greener energy.
Like a really great example of kind of bringing back this older form of technology, combining it with newer technological innovations, and then using it to achieve a goal which is pretty dang cool. But if it doesn't work, then I guess they'll be mocked as like the pirate people forever.
Yeah. And kind of just following up on that, I'm curious on how from your experience, what the attitudes of these Chinese shipbuilding facilities, the personnel there have been like about whether adopting a new technology or trying out a novel or unusual design implementation. It's just speaking from experiences with many of the manufacturers I work with in supply chains. Oftentimes they're very rigid in the level of detail, but also in their SOPs, in their or standard operating procedures, in the way they do things. So at times when clients introduce something new, there's always a lot of reluctancy, a lot of back and forth negotiating, liability concerns, and all of that. What has been, I guess, how has that played out? I suppose in this example and in other ones you've seen where there's been something new introduced, and has there been any cultural blockers there between like some of like the more Western clients and the Chinese manufacturers?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty similar. Like from what I can sense is that you don't want to be the first one because it's like you don't want to fail. Versus like if another shipyard does it, you can look at them by example, be like, okay, well, how is the ship doing now? How is it going? And the fact that this is so new, I think there is a lot of hesitation. Not that the fact that they couldn't do it, but it's just that they kind of really, at least now, put all that risk on the owner. Like you're going to add these wind sails, like these 3 metal columns in the ship, to have 10% more efficiency. That's cool. But like you're going to have to talk to your engineers. You're going to have to do your own, manufacturing, research, procurement, because, but that's just kind of like, because this is just, it's currently happening now. And it's interesting where it's like, well, how is this going to work out? Like what's going to happen? Because the ship owner is very interested in this new technology. And so I think it's going to be probably a challenge, I would say, for many ship owners to implement this super novel technology that's not needed and it hasn't been used often.
Gotcha. Now I'm also curious on kind of your involvement in And not just this, but kind of your day to day then, since you deal with a lot of stakeholders from both like the client side, but also the Chinese manufacturers. So what is kind of your day to day interactions like? And also combined with the fact that you're still learning Chinese and you that's how like we kind of met. I assume your work language is all in English, but I assume a lot of things also get lost in translation because of the technicalities. So what is your day to day like with navigating this as an American who is just starting to get proficient in the local language?
No, yeah. So I would say my involvement with like these stakeholders is extremely low because I feel like I'm just that literal blue collar worker. I put on my boiler suit and they're like, go out and make sure things are okay. And I'm like, you got it, boss. So I don't really like, I have interactions with like shipyard workers, be like, hey, you need to fix this because XYZ. Or it's like, okay, we're following the procedure, let's step by step. So it's not so much any really communication with the higher ups at the shipyard or higher ups that frequently with the ship owners until kind of like the end of the project, which is where we give all these documentations that state like, yes, the ship follows these rules, sign, stamp,
Hmm.
deliver. Because in my day to day, I am working with the ship owners who are also doing the inspection with me, and we'll have like a discussion, be like, hey, and because I'm still learning to do this job and learning the language, like I don't know shipbuilding terminology in Chinese. I only know gossip words, I'm here for chit chat. It's like, do you have bagua? I'm all about that
Oh,
bagua. That's all I want to know about. So like my day to day is more like it's a lot of eye contact. I look at the say for hull, and if it's like the welding is not great, I'll like point at it, look at him, and I'll like mark it up, and he'll
oh,
give me the
that's
thumbs up, like I
hilarious.
understand, and then you kind of just move
Oh,
on. So it's not
what are
that
some
much.
other like eye
Yeah,
maneuvers that you can do to communicate different things?
it's a lot of like looking at the document because it's the for like a test procedure, it's written in Chinese and English. And if I get to an English section, I'm like, what's this about? They'll read the Chinese and they're like, what? And I'm like, are we going to do this? But then for like a hull with like poor welding, or if like there's the metal's like bent, we have standard symbols that we write so they know. So it's not anything super
Oh, okay.
surprising. And
Okay.
then when I talk to, because I don't know the term for welding or grinding, or like there's a pour, there's like a hole, like
Hmm.
fix it. There's some damage, fix it. We have these standard symbols that, so someone, either like shipyard worker themselves or like a QC quality control who like takes all like at the end of the inspection, we have like an inspection report. And if I have any
Hmm.
comments, I'll write the comments. And so he will keep track, or if I would go back out and check them. And so usually there's a worker who's like watching me look at what I'm looking at and look at the comments I'm writing.
Hmm.
But for the most part, if there's like something wrong and you could look with your eyes, you can look at them and you
Yeah.
could just be like, boo-ha. And they're like, yeah, it's bad.
It's like there's a hole here. Point at it
Yeah.
and
It's
look
like,
at
come
them,
on.
and then
Or
they'll just
you're
nod.
like, yes, they'll be like,
Yeah, it's a hole.
yep, fix it. So
That's funny. So you have like a symbolic language in between English and
mhm.
Chinese that you can kind of both work through.
Yeah, because I feel like because in the shipyard, it's like just kind of body language. You're just kind of trying to communicate where it's like, I like point to a drawing. I'm like, and I know enough where it'd be like, where? Nali. And they're
Yeah.
like, I'll show you. And I'd be like,
Uh-huh.
great. Because I haven't really felt like it would be super beneficial to know more in depth maritime Chinese words. But haven't really
Hmm.
felt like, oh, like if you don't have it, you're going to struggle because there's plenty of foreign ship owners. So like a ship owner will have like maybe half the staff foreigners, half the other staff local Chinese.
Hmm.
So there's always a mix. So if it's like another foreigner, we like there's usually like one guy in our like little group of like testing who could speak English well enough to like communicate what we're doing. And if it's, a Chinese, ship owner representative, they mainly speak Chinese, and I'm just like, hopefully I can follow this procedure, or I'll stop, be like, okay, what did you guys talk about? And so it's just definitely patience and, eye
Mm-hmm.
contact, body language reading, understand what's going on.
Yeah,
That's
wow. No, I'm sure it's a lot of just navigating, a lot of
sounds
verbal
really interesting
cues.
and
Just
fun.
like, yeah.
If it weren't so like grueling hours wise.
Yeah. Because it's the kind of job where I know I can't do this forever because it's physically demanding most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not boring, which I appreciate because
Yeah.
I can't handle a job that has like the sense of like not boringness, but it's just like, oh, day in, day out, you like do the
Mm-hmm.
same thing over and over again. Like every day, like I can have a sense of what I do, but I won't know exactly what I do until we start dividing up the day's work. So, like
Yeah.
one day I could be on board the ship looking at some test procedures, looking at alarms coming in. The next day I could be on the side of the ship looking at welding to make sure that it meets, it's good, make the marks I
Mm-hmm.
need to make. The next time it could be like not on the ship, just like one of the puzzle whole pieces. You're like, okay, all these metal pieces are aligned with the other metal pieces and they're all welded correctly to what the drawing
Mm-hmm.
says. So
很
it's
好。
just such a vast, yeah. I'll be like, Schweiger, how'd up.
好的。
Yeah, wow. That sounds very interesting and lots of task variety, which is definitely good for someone like you. Like you said, you need to talk to people every day. You need that that
Mm-hmm.
engagement. So you've been at it for almost 2 years now. And earlier you also mentioned that like when you're working like this in Asia, you oftentimes get like 8 years of knowledge crammed into like 3 years. So as you're approaching your like kind of 2-year mark of the China part of your maritime engineering journey, what would you say are some of those most valuable things you've learned, or not even most valuable, just like the highlight of your learning here?
Yeah. So one of my coworkers kind of described working here in China, like learning how to do this job in China, like drinking water from a fire hose. So like you're definitely drinking more water. That's kind of how it feels. Now that I'm 2 years, I'm pretty settled in the sense of like the feeling. But that first like 6 to 9 months, I'm like, this is overwhelming. Like, how am I supposed to do a good job when I don't even know the job? But now, like, I'm kind of used to that feeling where it's like, it's okay. Like, it's okay because you know what? I have like great coworkers that support, like, if I have a question, because they have so much knowledge. And talking to them, it made me realize like I won't feel like super knowledgeable in everything until like a decade because it does just take time. It takes time to see the same things over and over again. But then I would talk to like my colleagues back in the United States who do the same type of job, and we'll like kind of discuss every once in a while, like we'll ask each other questions like, hey, has anyone experienced this problem? And then like some of us can answer. But just kind of like that knowledge is definitely different because I could see the same process from start to finish, 8 times over when my coworker has only seen it maximum twice. So it's like, oh, like I know that this is a problem with the installation of this piece. Like I'm always going to go check it because we've had these kind of like small manageable problems, but it's like needs to be fixed on the past X amount of projects. So it's like, I'm always like, now I'm always looking out for this. Versus my coworker is like, I didn't even realize that I had to look out for this because this is my first time seeing it, even though I've been doing this job also for 2 years. So there's like these small things that are like the hot spots. You're always like, I'm always going to check these things. Even if you walk around the ship to do one other inspection, you can always kind of like do some spot checking as you're going around. Like, let me hit up my hot spots. Like, let me check out the layout and overview. And so like you get to kind of build this like hotspot sensor more being here in China
Instinct.
than I think. Yes. Where it's like kind of like you're walking around the ship and you're always like, okay, well, now that I'm on the ship, like, let me check out these things because on the past few ships, this has not been installed the best, or it's like, this painting needs to be here, or this marking is like missing, and then you can kind of just be in a space, you're like, something's off, like what's and it's like you almost like sense like something's like what's happening here, like what's going
Develop
on.
that
Yeah.
intuition.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
That's
so I
great.
think you develop it quicker here in China, like for sure. I know for a fact, or it's like, my coworkers will message me like, did you know XYZ? I'm like, no, yeah. Like, what?
Yep.
What? You didn't know this?
How did you
It's
not?
like, oh,
Yeah, you've seen it like
Oh.
10 times already, like
Yeah.
in half a year.
Experiential reps for sure. That's no joke.
hmm
And also reminds me of like how some doctors in China, like because the sheer scale of like the amount of patients that they have to see versus like doctors in the States, like they also develop like they can like tell kind of their sixth sense, like what's wrong with you in like 2 minutes by asking you like 3 questions. And they might not be like super nice, but they get the job done, right? And they got to help so many people. So yeah, it's like another parallel.
No, for sure. Because, yeah, it's just like the scale. It's like this, right? Isn't it with everything? Like the more frequently you do something, the more frequently you see something, the better you get at it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like true with everything. And it's like so annoying that it's true. Like you wish it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, with
Yeah.
practice makes perfect. And you're like, I hate how that statement's true. So, with more and more practice, you get better and better. But also for me, one thing that I'm not like worried about, but just like one thing on my mind is that I'm doing such heavy new construction work that when I
Mm-hmm.
go back to the United States, it's most likely going to be after construction, which is like a totally different, side of this industry. Because I work a typical 8 to 5. Like it's every day. Like sometimes you have to stay longer, sometimes you have to arrive earlier, but for the most part, standard. Versus after construction, it's like, hey, a ship's coming in 6 hours. We need you to go on board, look at everything in 8 hours and find all like the things that need to be fixed, and they need to fix it within 2 days. So it's like a different pace. Because now I'm kind of used to like taking my time to look at things. Like, yes, we have an inspection, but if we end early, I can walk around, because we essentially have like 6 months to look at everything. Versus with after construction, you have a day, if that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that's, so that's kind of like the different different use of the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So,
For sure.
seeing how, everyone says that new construction is a great place to learn because you learn how it should look like from the start. So when you go on board to like a 20-year-old ship, you're like, that doesn't look like how it should be. What's going on here? They'd be like, oh, well, we switch something around. We'd be like, well, you got to switch it back, blah, blah, blah. And so, and then like the owner relationship, like the, class owner shipyard relationship is different, because I feel like in new construction, you're really trying to like build a relationship, versus after construction, you just need to get the job done. Like you're not like super like fostering and nurturing and be like, oh, like, how are you today? How's it going? Like still polite, but you're like, you're going to leave in a day. And so you need to get these things done, and we're not going to bend to it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Okay.
know?
It's like less human, less interesting, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess
So
you
I
talked
do.
about, I guess, maybe going back to the US or staying further. So when you've been here in China for like 2 years, what do you anticipate, I guess, like for your future? You want to stay longer in China or Asia, go somewhere else? Yeah, any plans for the future?
I have like the near future kind of planned out, and then everything after that is what I'm trying to figure out now.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been here for 2 years. I see myself staying for another 2 more years. There's like a few kind of like project management aspects I want to learn that I might be able to get that opportunity to do within the next 2 years. And then to do like what to do afterwards is that's the big dilemma that I've been thinking about, because I think working in China in the shipbuilding industry is just wow. Like that is a crazy, amazing title. And then to just be
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm a surveyor in the United States as an American, doesn't have that same ring, doesn't have that
Mm-hmm.
same interest. Because one thing that I'm
Yeah.
really learning more about myself now is I like a challenge. I like to
Mm-hmm.
climb a super difficult mountain and be like, I have made a successful life here in China. Like, wow,
Yeah.
look at this. Because I know I can make a successful life for myself in the United States. Like, that is a known fact. It's not a challenge. So, like, right
Right.
now, I'm trying to figure out what is going to be that next challenge. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Even though in the moment of climbing that mountain, I'm like, why did I ever choose to climb this super difficult, intense task? But then once I
Mm-hmm.
kind of like get to the other side, I'm like, I feel pretty accomplished, and I've kind of always done like the harder path. Like I've always chose the slightly more challenging path. And so moving to China and doing this job, like that's been the most challenging thing I've ever done. And so now I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, what's the next big thing? And so I've been kind of, debating like I might go back to the United States just to be around my friends and family more frequently. But then I'm thinking like kind of like what next international thing I might do, because I do sense that I might be abroad for like the next decade. So like what, and then like
Okay.
with that interest, like what can I do with it? I'm building this like industry knowledge because I would definitely want to stay more maritime industry. I like this industry. I like how vast and small it is at the same time. And so it's like with this in-depth technical knowledge and my desire to talk and connect with people and my desire to be abroad, like what can I do with all of that? And so right now I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely like exploring like different options. So like right now I'm just kind of like keeping my eyes and ears open to what the next thing is.
Mm-hmm.
For
Awesome.
sure, for sure. And you still have some time. I mean, you have 2 more years in China. That's the plan. I'm sure you'll learn lots. And it's an enjoyable part of the challenge, just getting to learn and to improve yourself. I guess you talked about work challenges and just learning so much on a day-to-day basis. And now kind of like on the life part, what has been the challenges of living here? You did mention some of it in the very beginning of in like China on hard mode, small city, lack of activities. I guess what would you say have been the biggest takeaways from that, and how have you tried to overcome these challenges?
Feel free to share any funny stories too. We like those.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. I think definitely the biggest challenge for me was the social aspect. It was, I felt pretty isolated in the beginning just because there's like a lack of young people, and then there is this sense because I'm like an obvious foreigner is that I feel like a low-level local celebrity. That's how I describe it to people. I'm a low-level local celebrity. People are I'm like feel like you walk around the mall. I'm surprised more people haven't died from broken necks from how quick they've done a second look at me. And
Uh,
I kind of describe it and it's like and it's kind of makes sense because also if I saw someone, because how I describe it, because no one's looking at me like you don't belong here. It's more like complete shock. Like if you saw a horse confidently walking through a mall, you'd be like, okay, but like you're gonna look at that horse. And so that's kind of how I feel. It's like,
that's
why is this
hilarious.
horse here? And you're just like curious, but like you can't communicate with the horse. Like you don't know horse speak, but you're like, oh man. And so that's kind of how it feels to be in this small town where it's like, even though I moved from like a tiny town to a slightly bigger tiny town, I would go into a space like for the second time. The first time was like 4 months ago. The second time they'll come up to me. And because now I'm learning Chinese and my Chinese is to like a 3-year-old level, I kind of understand what they're
Mm-hmm.
saying. And they'd be like,
Mm.
wow, you were in here months ago. This is your second time, isn't it? I'm like, yes, it is.
Oh, they're
And we
so
didn't even
observant.
speak that. So observant. Like, I will learn more about what the foreigners that I know are doing in the tiny town from Chinese people, like, oh,
Oh my
did you
goodness.
see that
That's hilarious.
did you see, like, he's in the United States right now? And I didn't even know this. It's like, yeah, he's at the basketball game. I'm like, how do
What the
you know? It's
heck?
like, well, because these people posted, and I'm like, wow.
The grapevine,
And
man.
it's people know everything. Like, people, like, one time I got off the bus and one man was really looking at me, and I'm like, okay. And then like 10 minutes later, my Chinese friend messaged me like, hey, do you get off at the bus stop at this place? I'm like, I do. It's like, someone I know
Oh.
saw you there. I'm like, great.
Oh my-
Thank you.
Very family-oriented
Yeah.
town. One big family.
Yeah, people, and it's the kind of, and it's like, you don't, it's, man. So it's like that people keep tabs on you. And then it's not like, I know it doesn't mean like, it's not that deep, but it's like, so it's like, you know, just embrace it. Like, oh, yeah. I was there.
Thanks.
But I think what's some of the funny, and this is like, I think a difference a little bit from like US to China is that you meet, you know, someone local, they ask you the same 5 questions every single time. Like, what's your name? Where are you from? How old are you? Like, what you do for work? And like, are you single? And it's like everyone, you know, it doesn't matter what the context is. We could be at like a friend dinner or at the shipyard. And it's like, oh, and if depending on how you answer it, they're like, oh my goodness, let me pull you out my Rolodex of single men for you right now. And I'm like,
Oh.
okay. And it's like
Wow.
everyone's talking, be like, oh, you're learning Chinese from a Chinese teacher? No, it's not the way to do it. You know what you need? And I'm like, let me take a guess. Chinese boyfriend? Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and so this is what I said. I'm like, introduce me. I don't say no. That's like, really? Would your parents be okay if you dated a Chinese person? I'm like, yeah. It's like, what about marrying? I'm like, yeah, they would be okay. It's like, really? I'm like, I've yet to be set up on a date though.
They're so adamant about it though. They keep asking you.
They keep
Gotta
asking me.
Through.
There was one time, one coworker, it's very cute. He sat me down at a company dinner. He's like, okay, Julia, what are your requirements? And I gave him some like stupid basic requirements. And he was like, okay, I'll see what I can do. Silence. You know, I think, and I don't know if this is amongst everyone else, but at least in my office, some of the most nosy people I've ever met. They want to know what's going on in your life all the time. It's like, oh, you're going to go visit your friend in Shanghai? Boy or girl? I'm like, a girl. It's like, oh, okay. And then I'll come back from the weekend to be like, oh, how was your weekend? I'll be like, oh, it was great. It's like, any Schweigas? I'm like, what? Always asking. They're like, I know the city is known for their Schweigas. I'm like, no Schweigas. Like, what? Impossible.
Yeah.
So
no, I even wonder if that's how they, because they feel that this might be like a universal thing, like relationships. So this is probably one of the few ways they feel like they can relate to have a conversation.
Yeah. And I also think that that's kind of how dating in small town China is. It's not dating apps or going out in person. It's your mom meeting some other woman who has a kid around your age, and you're like, meet. And that's how, like, it's, you have your Rolodex. It's like, yeah, it's just a bunch of blind dates. Like, that's how a couple of my friends have dated people, is like their parents will introduce you, or like their aunties will introduce you to some person.
Exactly.
And in my head, from my experience of small town Chinese people, is they're extremely shy. I think making eye contact with me is like the most intense and stressful moments of their life.
Event.
So the idea of going on a double date with some poor local Chinese man with one of whoever coworker and his wife sounds like the worst, most awkward double date. And I'm like, I'm here for it. Do it. I can't wait for this man to avoid eye contact with me as if it's like against the law, where it's like, I cannot even face her. And I'm like, yeah, I can't wait.
It's just
and then after
the respect. It's too respectful. He can't look at you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because it's, you know, and it's all, I know it's all fun and games, you know, so I'm just like, why not play into it? You know, I can they're like, oh, would you really? I'm like, do it. I bet you won't do it.
Yeah, you won't.
Yeah. So
2
it's
more
very
years
fun.
though. I think it'll happen.
Maybe they'll try to open up more. 2 years.
Yeah.
Still have time.
Because also, like, with the 2 years, like, another reason why it's like I want to get better at my Chinese. Because, like, I feel like now that I'm talking a bit more in Chinese, I'm getting a bit more confident where it's like, you know what?
Hmm.
So what if my vocabulary is like a 2-year-old's? I'm going to be the most enthusiastic 2-year-old you've ever met. Where it's like, wow. Because one thing also about Chinese people in small town, you speak 2 words of Chinese and they're giving you endless praise. They're like, oh my God, I've never heard such better Chinese in my entire
Such
life. You're expert Chinese
beautiful.
level. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, me? I'm not. And they're like, you understood what we said. Oh my God, your Chinese is good. And, I'm just like, oh, 谢谢你，不是，我的汉语不是很好. And they're like, wow. They go crazy.
It's
So
the more you explain that your Chinese is not good, the more obsessed they will be with how good it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like, I understand this. I understand. Play the humble.
Mhm.
I can play humble. I can play
Mhm.
humble. But when I get back to the United States, my Chinese is perfect, guys. My Chinese is spectacular. And they'd be like,
Oh, yeah.
wow, it is.
Yeah. So I kind of like rounding out our conversation here. One of the last questions that I like to ask is kind of about any advice or takeaways that you have for like the younger generation, and maybe specifically like about this choice to like live abroad and work
Mhm.
abroad early on in your life. Like, how do you think this is transformative or maybe valuable for young people?
Yeah. So I was thinking, my advice would be to like not let fear get in the way, you know, because for, like especially the fear of change and the fear
Mm.
of different. Because before I came over, I actually talked to quite a few people and a lot of them said like don't go to China. And but there was something true to what I wanted out of life that like kind of like, hey, there's a reason why like you've always wanted to live abroad and didn't say where, and like your dream came to you in the unexpected way, but it came to you. This is your opportunity. Like, even though it's scary and different and you have no idea, like this is what you've been working towards. So I would say to the
Hmm.
younger generation, like your dreams and what you aspire to become or to do might come to you unexpectedly, but like trust that, like
Mm.
don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of different, don't let fear hold you back. It's hard. Don't get me wrong, but like just close your eyes and go.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and
Yeah,
definitely I think
no.
moving to a new country, like after school or whatever, it forces you to take on some fears, but at the same time, it's like because you don't know anyone there, you get to start building yourself like fresh from the ground, and you get to build like a braver, more courageous version, right?
And I would
Yeah.
say, like, with that, like, you're going to have all these fears, and then you'll arrive, and then you'll realize maybe half of them are not even true. It's like it was yourself trying to hold you back.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of
Mm.
just, be a little mindful of that. Because whatever you are picturing, half of it's probably not even true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's no one, the artist holding the pollution thing in the Olympics.
The
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure it's a very
vacuum
different
cleaning
world
the air.
from here. The vacuum cleaning the
Yeah.
air. Yeah, no, I mean, China changes so fast as well. So literally something you might have seen like a few years ago it would have evolved. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's exciting to be growing along with a society that's also developing maybe just as rapidly. And yeah,
Facts.
and then now is the time to do it in your early 20s when you have not tied down by a mortgage or
No,
anything.
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Because that was like one thing where it's like, I know for a fact that I can do this now. Like, I have my responsibilities are to a level where it's like I can take this opportunity. So like this is the easiest it's ever going to be to take this opportunity. Why not take it? Even though everything is like, I'm scared, I could cry. It's like, okay, but just it's okay. Because also one thing that helped me is like people have done this before. I'm not the first person to move to China to do this job. So it's like I'm not,
You're not the first person to do that wind sail
You're not
design
doing
that
the
no other
wind sails.
shipbuilding firm's done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
man.
exactly. So it's like putting things into perspective a little.
For sure. Yeah. So I guess the one last thing that we like to ask for our guests is it's typical of many different podcasts you might have listened to is to give a recommendation. And one thing we like to do for Liminal Space here is that the guests will pick a category. So you get to pick the category and your recommendation in that category. So it could be like books or movies, or I think Josh tried to do like electronic devices or like appliances or something.
Yeah.
Like you pick a category, your recommendation, and Matt and I, we have to also pick our recommendation in that category.
We'll try our best.
Yeah.
Please don't be ship engineering related.
Oh gosh, pick your favorite ship. The Titanic. That's the only ship I know.
Yeah, it's like, what's your favorite boat? No. You know what? But I think I have to make it somewhat maritime related. So you're going to maybe take your time. But I would say the category is ocean/boat related movie. Okay? It's a movie. And probably one of a movie that I don't think a lot of people have heard of. It's called, Kon-Tiki. And it was like a true story that got made into a movie to essentially prove that this Polynesian island had people from, I think, Peru or Chile, and like through these different currents of wind and like water were able to like sail from the west to, or like east to west, some crazy story. And so essentially these 4 guys built a replica of this boat to like prove it and their journey. And it's a very interesting, cool boat maritime related movie.
Very, very cool. I guess Matt was so wowed that he had to take a moment there. Man, gosh, I am all right. Now I'm on the spot. I feel like
like ocean, water, boat,
ocean, water, boat. That's my favorite. Okay, I'm gonna be far less sophisticated, but I guess one of my favorite like Disney Channel shows when I was a kid was Sweet Life on Deck. And so I guess that just came to mind because it takes place on a ship. It's a cruise ship. Yeah. So I believe there was a Sweet Life on Deck movie. So I will go with that just because I can't think of like a
trust your gut, trust your
good
instinct.
enough example.
Yeah.
No, I did like that show a lot. Even though I don't think there was any. I mean, the only water you see is like the far away, like the scene of the boat on the water, the background. I don't think it was actually filmed anywhere near like a body of water, but that was, cool Disney show as a kid.
I also grew up watching that. Not as much, I think, as Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, but definitely like, I'm like, all right, let's also watch it.
Yeah.
All right. I think so. It's been a while since I've watched the movie, but I watched it a few times. I think in college. It's the movie called Life of Pi.
Oh yeah.
So it's about like this boy from India. I think he was working on a ship or something, and then he has a very strange life. He gets like stranded on a ship with a tiger, and they kind of have to learn how to deal with each other and make their peace and eventually find a way to survive. And they're kind of, at sea just for a really long time. And it's like a movie where nothing really happens, but if you want it to be really deep, it can be really deep. And it's a visually striking movie. So I would recommend that people check it out. And it's also based off of a book, which may also help connect some of the dots as well. So yeah. That's my
Yeah, that's a good recommendation for sure.
So yeah, thank you so much, Julia. It was so much fun to learn about your life and your journey and your story.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Liminal Space, where we navigate the thresholds of culture, identity, and experience. If our conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share your own story with us. We'd love to hear what you've discovered as well in the spaces in between. So join us next time as we continue to explore what it means to live in the liminal. Until then, keep searching for the insights that lie just beyond the obvious. See you guys next time.